You want me to be your clicker if it doesn't do it?
I don't know which way to point it. This way. Is it gonna go? Oh, there we go. Okay. Does it work?
No, you can see it covered on. I'll play with this and you do
Okay.
your thing.
I'll do my thing. So our learning objectives, we're going to talk about an alternative lens for viewing movement and gait that offers fewer limitations and more possibilities. We're going to hope you'll understand the importance of diagnosing the specific component of movement that's the primary impairment. Hopefully you'll be able to describe multiple options for using task constraint-induced motor recovery to promote greater dynamic control of the affected lower extremity. And understand how normal movement is safety and the real-world limitations of memory and equipment-based strategies. And state effective treatment activities that recalibrate the perception of postural vertical and to significantly improve outcomes and reduce the stress, both the client and the therapist. I think anyone that's wrestled somebody with pusher syndrome knows what I mean. So as I was talking about, I think we have kind of a unique perspective. Most physical therapy clinics and hospitals are based on insurance pay and are reliant on that. So when the insurance stops paying, you have to stop seeing them, right? But we get to keep seeing them, so we see a different point where almost no one else is working unless they're doing some pro bono care. But that's pretty much all we do. And then once we're done with them in physical therapy and we maximize their function as much as possible, then they get graduated to our assisted fitness program, and we just have tons of health and wellness programs to keep them fit, keep them out of the hospital, keep those secondary conditions coming back, and quite frankly, keep all the hard work that I put into it going and not lost. But we see a really broad spectrum of diagnoses, pretty much anything, mostly neurological, and as you can see by those clients from literally the age of 2 to 102. And you know, our mandate from our board and our mission is to maximize their function. So we need to gain significant improvements beyond their previous plateaus. So if you want to get something different, you usually need to do something different. So we think we've landed on a few things we think helped. I thought I would share with you. And plus, you know, if we're going to get new gains, we need to see what has been addressed before and what hasn't. So to us, there's just some really high impact factors that we routinely see, routinely get missed. So to us, that means that they're getting missed out there in the community. And new gains means greater intensity. That's the challenge center, not the easy center. Get to that higher hanging fruit. Okay. There we go. Okay. What factors we think makes a difference? I think it's in the way we diagnose movement dysfunctions and the primary impairment, the interventions that we select, and that all of our interventions are directly and expressly driven by addressing the primary impairment. Now that changes, as you know, as you go along. How we involve the sensory system, how we view true safety, our commitment to preserving potential. The last thing we want is for the physical therapist to be the client's limitation to their ultimate function, right? We don't want to be the barrier. I promise you that 9 times out of 10, when the client's hit a plateau, it's not the client's plateau. It's a physical therapist, my plateau. And I just haven't hit on that next thing I need to work on. I haven't hit on that right increment to bring them to the next level, shake them loose. Of course, these guys aren't going to go back to dancing ballet. I know that. But I don't know. I wasn't given a crystal ball when I graduated from PT school, so I really don't know how far they're going to get. They surprise me all the time. All the time, every time. My guesses are poor as to what their ultimate outcome is going to be. So I find it really interesting that we have all these predictions of, we're really sure that this person's going to walk and that person's going to walk, and oh no, that indicator, they got a 0 out of 5 on their manual muscle test, so they'll never walk again. So I find that kind of interesting because we just don't find them to be true. And then we usually start with we always start with the ultimate goal and work our way backwards. And guys, I know we have the privilege of doing that. And you know, we have the support behind us for doing that. I realize that that's not what happens. I worked 15 years in standard hospitals and standard clinics, so I really feel very lucky and honored that I get to do this. It's a lot of fun, but it's kind of a lot of pressure, you know, when somebody's saying, you need to save my life. So first, diagnosing. Just thought these were kind of fun cartoons, because I think it's very accurate. We're going to look at it from different directions. So we're going to talk about an alternative perspective on movement and gain analysis. So let's talk about the traditional one. So you know, these are typical things you'll see in a book or in a PowerPoint display here, where you have the dysfunction that you see, and then description of it, and then what's causing it, right? And they're almost always directly attributing these to weakness, tone, spasticity, range of motion, and sometimes motor control and coordination, right? It's weakness, it's spasticity, it's tightness. So if it's weak, strengthen it. If it's tight, stretch it. If it's spasticity, good luck, because there's nothing we can do about that. If it's motor control, we just practice, right? So that doesn't give you a whole lot of options. Here's another one, kind of the same thing. Excessive knee extension, knee hyperextension, right? It's either quadriceps weakness, quadriceps spasticity, or knee flexor weakness. That's your choices. So if they're hyperextending, you just strengthen the quads and everything will be all right. Or the hamstrings if that doesn't work, right? We know that. That happens all the time, right? Sorry, I'm a little nervous. Somebody let me know if I'm not loud enough, which rarely happens. Oh, I was talking about the next screen and you guys weren't seeing it, sorry. It's switching on one screen, it clicks on one screen and not the other. Sorry about that. So, again, a lot of things, I look at a lot of gait books, and I'm a nerd, so I read a lot of research studies, and I kind of enjoy that, sadly. But I find it interesting when I go look through the gait analysis books, and there'll be 2 pages on the hip, right? And there's 2 pages on the knee, and a page on the ankle, and a paragraph on the trunk. And I'm going, really? Really? Even after core strengthening became so popular? So I see it referred to as the hat all the time. I had head, arms, and trunk. Kind of like literally and suggestively that it's just a passenger on top of your trunk, right? It's just riding around like a hat. And again, largely assumed the deviations are caused by weakness, spasticity, range of motion. So then Theric, stretching, bracing, repetitive practice, and then teaching compensations when those don't work, right? Or first in some cases. So yes, there's evidence for this approach, but is it the best approach? Can we do better? That's my question. It's not, you know, I know evidence-based, and it's not that there's not evidence, but, you know, there's evidence for echinacea too. But if I have pneumonia, I really don't want my doctor telling me to go take some echinacea and rest. I would like some antibiotics, please. I'd like it. If I come in with a cough and a fever, I do not want cough suppressants and a fever reducer. Thanks for, and be sent on my way, right? I need him to figure out exactly what's causing that. I want him to figure out that primary impairment and treat that, right? And I'm telling you, I think a dose of penicillin or a Z-Pak is going to get me a lot farther than just treating my symptoms. So this is a study where I'm not super big fan of evidence-based just because I much prefer us to move on to comparative analysis and finding the best answer to something, not just I found a study that said so. So what they found in this study, you have the same one as me, right? And they looked at a lot of literature. Greater muscle strengthening does not generally transfer to improved walking ability. Gait retraining through different types of exercise is the most common, but not the most effective. Intensive mobility training improves gait ability both in subacute and chronic stroke. The greatest gains came from intensive, upright function focused approach. i.e., short arc quads are not going to get you there. So alternative lens. What if it's not the stroke? What if it's not the brain injury? What if it's not that's making them do all these crazy patterns that you're seeing? Crazy idea, I know. What if the client's making choices? What if they're not just a passive victim of whatever brain cell popped in that last stroke they had? Maybe they're an active participant in this, and maybe they've chosen how they're going to deal with this wonky leg of theirs. You know, we have infinite varieties of strokes, right? Infinite numbers of places they can happen. We're all wired differently, so even if it's in the same place in 2 different people, it's still going to be different outcomes, right? Infinite varieties of stroke and brain injuries, and we see about 3 or 4 different ways that people walk. Now, how is that possible if everything's just driven by the specific damage that occurs, that we have infinite varieties and we come down to 3 or 4 different ways of walking, right? That just can't be direct cause and effect, or we'd have a lot more varieties than what we're seeing, right? So they have to be making choices and influencing the outcome of how they're walking. They may be doing it for a good reason. You know, if your leg's not going to hold, if you can't keep your knee from buckling, then it's a pretty smart choice to lock your knee. I mean, your choices are lock your knee or go on your face. I'm going to lock my knee. I'm hoping my physical therapist gives me another choice so I can choose that. But until then, I'll lock my knee, thank you very much. I mean, really, that's the right strategy, right? And if they can't just push it straight, then, oh, look at that, it's a nice trick. If I pull my hip back, then it'll lock, right? Lovely. That's great. Why would I stand up on it and risk those wonky muscles not kicking in? I'll just lock it and that'll be great. Right? They're, you know, obviously they're short-sighted, but really from where they're coming from, a lot of these choices are intelligent choices. And I prefer to just start from that. Start from that idea that the client's making it, you know, from their perspective, an intelligent choice. And they're not just randomly picking something off the gate deviation box. So good news. The good news about that is if we can change the impetus, if we can change what's pushing them to make that choice, we can change the choice, right? And change the dysfunction, right? Change the impetus, we can change the choice, and we'll see something different. So to find and understand the impetus, we need to get to the why. So this is from the game analysis book by Perry and Bertfield. I think a lot of us have seen this. So from their perspective, we'll just do a little comparison. If somebody's got toe drag, right, the underlying cause is limited hip flexion, right, so they're tight. Limited knee flexion, tight again, or maybe the hamstrings aren't kicking in, I'm not sure. And excessive plantar flexion, right? Yeah, this thing never shows up. Okay. So here's a client of mine. When he came to us, he was falling 6 to 9 times a week. He started required to use a front wheel walker at school. I mean, this kid was falling all over the shop, and that's the ones he would tell us about. I'm pretty sure there was about twice as many of that he didn't tell us about. His biggest complaints were, I can't run or dance, and he was really upset he couldn't do PE with his friends at school and couldn't play soccer with his brother. And he's going completely through the toe of his shoe. Oh, it really wasn't his right. This was right? Blood was. Of his shoe every 6 weeks. So this kid had like size 15 feet, right? Huge feet, plus the AFOs in there. So his mother's having to buy him these really expensive $100 pair of shoes every 6 weeks, right? So, and she's a single mom, you know, 3 kids. This is really hard on her. I know it doesn't sound like much, but that's a lot of money. I don't know about you guys, but I don't get a $100 pair of shoes every 6 weeks. So interestingly enough, prior to coming to this country and receiving tendon lengthening, he was an independent ambular without assistive devices and very few falls. Was it pretty? No, probably not. But could he do it? Was he more functional? Yes. And then he came here and he got tendon lengthening, and every once in a while they'd go back in there, let's Botox the bejesus out of these guys. So I'll show you a little bit about my little buddy here walking. How's his back going to feel in about 10 years? Now, I just want to point out, You see how he's got to grab a hold there? He can't stop. What you're going to see as soon as I'm turning this off, because he's about to slam into me. And like every time he stopped, he would like nearly tackle me. And he's big. Luckily I'm big, but he would knock over some little people. So you can't hear it because there's other people screaming, but he's where's my little pointer?
To your right. The tube thingy. Yep.
Thanks. So he's dragging that toe back there and going through that toe of his shoe all the time. Okay, so this is what the traditional view would tell us, right? Oh, this is what the traditional view would tell us. That the treatment plan is stretch his hip flexors, stretch his quads, strengthen his hamstrings, and get an AFO with plantar flexion stop, done. Stretch his plantar flexors, oh, they lengthen them plenty, thank you very much. Inhibit his plantar flexors, you know, we started getting him going, and they Botox the Jesus out of him, and oh, just said it was so sad. He just went from being able to do all these things to nothing. It was terrible. And strengthen his dorsiflexors. So that would be what this treatment plan would indicate, where this view on gait would indicate for you to go, right? Well, now what if he's making a choice? Here's another perspective. What if he's dragging that toe because he can't stop because he doesn't have any plantar flexors? Your plantar flexors are what slow you down and lower you onto the next limb, right? You can see he can't stop. If he walks, he has to walk until he holds on to something to stop, right? He's dragging that toe as a brake. He doesn't want to just keep going, and that's what every time he falls is because he kept going too fast and couldn't find a way to stop, and he's falling, right? So he's doing it intentionally, maybe subconsciously, but he's doing it to control his forward momentum. In which case, if the primary impairment is that he's lacking plantar flexors, instead of reducing his excessive plantar flexors, we gave him more. We gave him more. I'm going to say we gave him some, because right after they lengthened his tendons and they popped him into AFOs, and I don't think the bottom of his feet saw the ground again, and he literally had none. But so we had to start with just getting him even turning those plantar flexors on. I mean, you guys know the drill of where we go with that. But we got the gastroc control and taught him how to use it. He didn't even have any idea how to use it to stop himself. Started being able to go sit to stand without his hands. And so here he is a little way, a couple months later. He's very proud of himself. He slowed down there. And he's very proud of himself that he stopped before he got to me. So quite a lot better, right? I assure you that before he came to us, he had over a year of physical therapy, stretching, strengthening, Botoxing, lengthening, and his falling was just getting worse the bigger he got. So this is on his birthday. He came in. I didn't really know it was his birthday, and they said, "Oh, what do you want for your birthday?" "I want to play soccer with my brother and my new dad." So yes, it's not just the challenge center for the clients. It's the challenge center for the therapists. I was like, "You want to what?" "I want to go outside and play." And he had brought his dad and his brother with him, and he wanted to play soccer. So you probably won't see my face too much, but there's a look of, oh my God, on there. But so here he is. So he misses, not very good aim. But you see him stop? And then what? He's going to get a good shot. So I didn't want to show you too many videos, but he's running around on the grass. He's actually running, which by the way you cannot do without plantar flexors. And you can't see his face either, but he's about the happiest kid on the planet right there. He was just delighted. His mother's in tears. It was awesome. By the time he left us, you know, he had already gone 3 months in his new shoes, and he didn't have anywhere near a hole in them. So That just shows you, right, what he was doing. He was choosing to use that as a brake. I don't blame him. I would be too. I'd be trying to save my life as well. When we gave him a brake and that he could use appropriately, he chose to use it, and he stopped needing to drag that toe on the ground. He was falling, at that point, he was still falling because he's a kid. And his mental age was about, I'd say 6 or 7, so he was still like, 6 and 7-year-olds fall down. He was doing stuff. Great. But he was falling down doing stuff, not because he couldn't stop himself. So, asking why, right? If we understand movement through the lens of the client's making it, that's true across the board. The answer to why also leads us to the impetus, right? We're getting to the front of your boot, point your shoulders down the hill, and are we capable of producing those movements? Sure. Every one of us can lean forward, push our, and we can put our, why don't we do it? Because we're gonna die, right? No way. I will shoot straight down this hill. Unless I know I can stop, I'm not gonna go. Forget it, right? So we're all back, like, you know, sitting back here, snow plowing, we're leaning back, right? I mean, it's the same thing anytime we feel unstable. I mean, if you come up behind somebody and yell boo, everybody's, what? You never see people go, ah! Right? They never go forward. People drop their center of mass and go back. Water skiing, I mean, I could go on and on. You'll see it everywhere. Law number 2, seek reliable, consistent stability with the lowest energy cost. Physically, cognitively, and neurologically, the lowest cost, right? But seek reliable consistency and stability. That's usually not their wonky muscles that they don't know how to work, that may turn on, maybe not. Is it going to turn on in time? Is it going to turn on enough? Once I turn it on, am I going to be able to turn it off to swing? Right? That's not reliable, consistent stability. We can make it so. So intervention selection. This little cartoon doesn't really have anything to do with this one, but it was left over from my perception one. I thought it was fun. What's the first thing? What did you see first?
A rabbit.
Rabbit. Did you? My vision's bad, so I saw the skull. So, so intervention selection needs to be driven by and directly aimed at correcting the primary impairment. Primary impairment, the biggest fish to fry, right? What's the one thing, if you had a magic wand, if you could just change one thing, and you wave that magic wand, that would make the biggest difference in that person's function and control, right? That's the primary impairment. That's the biggest fish to fry. Fry that first. And then, once that's resolved, trust me, another fish will float to the surface. So, we call it, this is a working title here, but our treatment we like to call task constraint induced motor recovery, right? So basically, you can't really put a glove on the leg. It's very difficult to walk if you completely immobilize one leg. So we don't have that luxury. But constraint induced therapy is just forced use therapy, right? But you don't have to be very creative. You just put a sling on them or put a glove on them and good luck to you. But and even that, they still have to have some movement just to even participate, right? So in this case, instead of using the glove, we're going to put them in tasks that force them. If they want to be successful in that task, they're going to have to do the movement component that I want, that they need, right? If they're not getting enough hip extension, I'm going to give them a task where if they don't extend their hip enough, they're not going to be able to do it, right? So the nicest part is the task drives the motor plan. That's what they need. They've got a motor control problem, right? They need help doing that. If somebody's weak, we help them do stuff, right? Physically challenging is often neurologically assistive, right? Just because we look at it from our orthocentric standpoint and think, well, that's harder if I make them step up on a higher surface. So obviously they're weak, so they're not strong enough to do that one, so I'll make them do something easier. This is, for us, the exact wrong way to go. First of all, it's not strength. They didn't have a stroke in their quads. They had it in their brain. It's motor planning, right? So you need to help them with their motor planning. And you need to give them a task that drives that motor plan that you need, that they can't produce on their own. You need to help them with that. So also, nice enough for me, The task driving the motor plan lessens the demand on my facilitation skills. I mean, there are those therapists, and I love watching them, that can just tickle people across the floor, right? And you're like, no way. But I'm not one of them, and I don't think the average therapist is. I mean, I can facilitate, but... and plus, then I have to draw my facilitation out. And for me, sometimes, if they need me tickling them across the floor, then that's my trick. I'm doing Geppetto and you know, pulling the strings there. I want it to be their trick. So how do you get these tasks and design these tasks? And you need to have that just right challenge, right? So how do you adjust it so you're getting that just right challenge? Sometimes those increments are small, guys. Very small increments. Sometimes they're bigger. This is one way that we adjust some of our tasks. Okay, so there on the left is neurological demand, not physical demand, neurological demand. So closed chain, obviously, you know, with feedback, joint compression, everything that you're getting there, closed chain is tremendously easier than open chain, right? Isometric, even orthopedically, people are stronger isometrically, eccentrically, than concentrically, right? And then obviously, when you're working within the synergy, extension begets extension, right? Flexion begets flexion. If you're asking them to turn on their triceps for the first time, you know, it's much nicer to ask them to do it from a closed chain and range with their elbow and everything else in extension, right? They're much more likely to turn on their triceps when the rest of their arm is extended than if everything's bent, right? So the easiest place, and the place you're first going to see a muscle coming back if you're trying to get something new, is closed chain, isometric, within synergy and range. Note that mounting muscle tests, open chain, concentric, from the opposite synergy, right? What's the first thing we do? We walk in there, and the doctors do, can you lift your arm over your head? First thing we do, right? And first thing we do, we hold their leg, can you kick your leg out? Right? Open chain, concentric. And then when they don't do it, we go, oh, that's a bummer. Oh, come on, try harder. Oh, that's good. 0 out of 5. To the nursing home with you. I'm just kidding. Although that happens. Right? And there's all sorts of modifications you can make for physical limitations, right? If they're not strong enough, then eliminate gravity and variations, adjustments for the physical demand. But there's no adjustments for the neuro demand, right? So we question the validity of these with the neurocolitis. Just to demonstrate that, it's not a great video. This is my buddy Jerry, and she didn't get all the, but I'm going to ask him to kick his leg out. And that's what I got. I got a little teeny wiggle. And I mean, this is the 3rd or 4th time I've tried. I've been tapping him, tapping the muscle, nothing, right? So that's 1 out of 5, 2 minus out of 5 that is generous, right? So then he really shouldn't be able to do this. 2 minus out of 5, muscle can't hold your entire body weight, can it? And he's a big dude. I don't know if I've ever seen a muscle that's truly 2 minus out of 5 holding up 165 pounds. Right? And that's 5 seconds later. Here's a couple. This is about his, I think, 9th or 10th treatment. When Jerry came to us, this literally happened to him. He got 12 visits after his stroke. You know, sometime, and he got sent home. But he said, well, the therapist asked me to kick my leg up, and when I didn't, she said walking wasn't really an option for me. He did 12 visits, and they never once tried to walk him. They did have, he said, well, they tried me stepping during my transfers. And when I didn't do that very well, they said it would be too dangerous to walk me. It would be unsafe to walk me, so they didn't walk me. They said I couldn't do it anyways. If I could, I would have done it. I would have taken a step, right? So he went home and sat and stared at his lap for 9 months. And became more and more depressed, and his family became more and more depressed. You know, what are we going to do? And he just sat there. I mean, That's no life, guys. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars saving his life, and then gave him 12 visits to figure out how to live it. I'm not sure how that makes sense. And what do you think is going to happen 3 years from now, after 3 years of sitting and staring at his lap? You think his health is going to be great? You think he's going to be more or less expensive to the system? Right? So he came to the eval, and at our eval, he walked 20 feet at the eval. This is after 9 months of neglect, right? What does that tell you? He could have done that all along. We didn't change his strength at the eval. We didn't change his range of motion at the eval, right? So he's still having a hard time advancing that limb. There we go. This is after 8 or 9 visits. He's going to make it about 100 feet. Not bad for 2 out of 5 quad. He's stepping past and everything. He's very proud of him, right? So let me tell you, if you ask somebody to do something and they don't do it, that's all you know, is that they didn't. You don't know can't. I can't tell you how many of my students come and all they can say is can't. Well, they can't lift their leg, or they can't straighten their leg. They can't. And I say, how do you know that? Well, I asked them to and they didn't. Well, what was the condition of observation? Well, they were sitting there and I asked them to kick. Okay, well, what else did you do? All you know now is to that verbal cue and that condition of observation and that position and that alignment, they didn't. Can't requires a fair bit of investigation, right? You don't know can't from what I asked him to do it, and he couldn't. No, he didn't. He didn't kick his leg up. You don't know can't yet. You really don't. If you ask them to do something and they don't do it, that's all you know, is they didn't. There's more to muscles than strength, obviously. After the acute phase, and when they get to us, Jerry aside, learning to turn off a muscle is more important than learning to turn it on. The muscles they can't turn off are more often the problem, right, than the muscles they can't turn on. Now that might be because probably for all the therapy they got before us, it was like push harder, do more, come on, let's try harder, you got to do this more, strengthen, kick, try to get more and more and more. But gait, if they turn it on, at some point they need to turn it off. That's how gait goes. This reciprocal, right? They need to be able to turn it off. And you can teach off. I promise you. You can teach off, or de-recruitment, or whatever you like to call it, even in the presence of spasticity or hypertonicity, which, by the way, get interchanged even in the literature, but we all know is not the same thing. Beth Fisher wrote a great paper on the, it's at the end here, but it's the unrelenting misperception of spasticity and hypertonicity. The upshot of that whole paper, which is a great read, is that it's not spasticity. Spasticity is not what's limiting your client's movement. Okay? So you can teach off. They can learn to de-recruit that muscle. Also, muscles around the trunk, especially around the trunk, the hip, the pelvis, they need to work in force pairs. They must be recruited together for the full force production, right? Something has to fix that pelvis. If you want your if your iliopsoas is pulling and they're doing this, right? And then the first thing the student says, well, they can't lift their leg. Oh, what should we do about that? Well, let's strengthen their hip flexors. And then I go like this and facilitate their abs and they put their foot up, right? Because it wasn't their hip flexors. Their hip flexors, right? Your muscles pull at both ends. And if you don't fixate the origin, then the force doesn't translate. Then half the force is lost, right? Half the force is going to go to either end. You need your abdominals kicking in at the right time and in at the same time as the hip flexors to fixate the pelvis so that the force is transmitted to the insertion. All of the force is transmitted to the insertion. Otherwise, you lose it, right? So only strength that is sequenced and choreographed with other muscles and the trunk is useful. You can have the strongest hip flexors in the world. They'll sit and stretch them all, strengthen them all day. And they're just going to pull their pelvis further, right? So, you know, and if you think about it, then supine work, where the mat is giving you all your trunk control, is going to have limited carryover. Teach them how to move where the mat's doing their trunk control, and Therex, in an isolated Therex, is going to have very little carryover, unless you're just doing that to get them started, letting them know they actually do have a leg, and you immediately use it in a functional position, right? And you're looking for, are they turning on, are they fixating their pelvis against the pull of those hip muscles? Oh, we just talked about that, but, oops, wrong one. We just talked about that. It was hard to find anything. I had to find something lying down. I mean, we all know we have to put their knee up when you're doing a Thomas test to hold their pelvis, right, to see what the hip flexors are doing. So, upright trunk control. We suggest that you train them with support that disallows weight bearing on the upper extremities. Okay, your tall pole, shopping cart. We have shopping carts with tall poles tied to them, which is kind of a lot of fun. When they're weight bearing on the upper extremities, it encourages trunk flexion, right? We're trying to get them upright. We're trying to get, when they're walking by themselves, they're not going to be able to do this, right? That encourages trunk flexion, hip flexion, and plantar flexion. Gets them back to where they want to be, right? And this whole time, we're trying to get them upright with their hip going forward in front of their ankle and letting their ankle bend as they go over it, right? It also teaches most of their trunk control through their scapula, okay? First, instead of their trunk muscles. Then they're unable to produce those muscle synergies and those force pairs when they need to be able to use their legs without their arms. You know, we talk about walking in and of itself, but generally in our homes, we don't walk in the kitchen just to go, oh, you know, it is lovely what we did with the cabinets in here. I really enjoy it. We don't just tend to walk just to walk, right? We tend to walk someplace to do something. We went into the kitchen to get a beer, or we went into the, you know, we got something out of the fridge and we need to walk over to the microwave to heat it up. We're human beings, so generally we're going someplace to do something with our hands. So if all of their trunk control is coming from their scapula, what happens when they let go? Right? I'd suggest to you, we don't need to train them that way. Right? You can train them. You don't need to teach them that. Trust me that on the last day, you can put a walker in front of them and they will be delighted. Right? They've been walking around with the pole or the shopping cart. Right? You don't need to teach them to lean on their arms. They've been doing that their whole life. They will lean on their arms. That's fine. And maybe they need to go home with a walker. But when they walk into the kitchen or they walk into the bathroom to do something, they can let go and have trunk muscles that will hold them up. Instead of letting go and now all their trunk control that comes from their scapula, they can't use it, right? It's much safer. That one on that purple one's kind of cool, right? So involving the sensory system, right? So our vision is a construct, right? So is graviception or postural vertical. Our brain is inventing that white triangle right there, right? There is no white triangle drawn, but your brain made one, right? Over here, there is no movement occurring, but you probably can't look at that in your peripheral vision without seeing motion. That's because your brain is taking in that vision, it's taking in sensory information. Yes, it's waiting a little. I'll take a little bit of vestibular, I'll take a little somatosensory, I'll take a little visual, but that is not a recipe. That doesn't just, you stir it up and you get postural vertical. Your brain is going to take that, weight it, and then it's going to tell you a little story. And it's going to take other cues from the environment, it's going to take assumptions that it makes, and it's going to tell you a little story about that there's actually movement happening, or that there's actually a triangle there, right? It doesn't, we do it ourselves, we can see right here. And our clients, you know, if they don't have great sensory processing, which if they don't have great motor control, there's not a great leap to think that they also damage their sensory processing, right? So defining upright in the sensory role in the motor output. The motor control loop there is mostly sensory. right? We tend to, I don't know about you guys, but when I was in PT school, I heard about this bit, basically. And then once in a while, they'd say something like, well, if you test them and they don't know which way their toes wiggling up or down, then they're not going to be able to walk. And they don't have any proprioception, so there you go. But, and this is where we can hit strength and range of motion, right? But then we have, yes, we do have mechanoreceptors that tell us all the information that's available if they're functioning. But then what we have the available sensory information. But then what we have is attention, detection, and filters. Our brain, you cannot possibly take in all the information, right? Can you guys hear that fan going? Right? But nobody was hearing that before I said it, right? Because your brain knew that was unuseful information, no point in processing that and thinking about it. It filters it out for you. When we have really bad filters and you can't filter anything out, one theory goes, we call that autism. So you can't filter properly, then you shut it all out, right? So our brain heavily filters what's coming in. So what's going to come in? We don't even consciously choose that most of the time. So then we have our awareness and understanding. And this is the little story that your brain has told you based on what it decided to pick up and its understanding of what it picked up. And that's going to go back to form your motor control center, right? So kind of bottom line, garbage in, garbage out. Attention, sensory and attention are a major part of that control loop. We can, and then that's great. Instead of just one point in that control loop that we can address on that motor output piece, now we have all sorts of other places in that loop that we can affect them and help them improve and improve the outcomes. So there's no reason to believe little kids have sensory processing, right? I really don't want them ignoring it when they're as big as Jerry and I'm in the middle of the room. So, pusher syndrome, and there's altered perception of verticality laterally. We call that pusher syndrome, okay? So they did a little experiment. I kind of like this thing. They put people in this, in a chair, sensory deprivation, right? And they rolled them to one side, and then they brought them back and they said, tell me to stop when you're vertical. Stop. Okay, and they rolled them to the other side. Tell me to stop when you're vertical. Stop. And they found different studies, several studies have found this, but they found an average of 8 to 12 degrees off center. Other studies have found 18 degrees. That's their vertical. That's their graviception. Okay? There's haptic vertical, postural vertical, graviception, all sorts of things that work here. Visual vertical. And pusher syndrome, visual vertical is not affected, right? We love that little trick. We put the mirror in front of people and voila, they sit up, which is kind of fun. But then, you know, you have to have somebody walking with a mirror behind, walking backwards with a mirror in front of them. And then if your vision's doing balance, what's going to do vision? Right? You need them, and that's just not how we operate anyways when we're up and walking. Graviception and vertical is largely unconscious, right? Part of that loop. So several authors have shown an abnormal perception of verticality in patients with different brain lesions. This doesn't just happen in stroke. Okay, in stroke it's pretty predictable. It'll happen they'll be pushing to this affected side, right? We see this in people with brain injuries all the time. And here's a place that they come to us and without their midline shift, I'm just going to go ahead and say midline shift because altered perception and verticality is very long. So many of them come to us with their midline shifts unresolved. And I'm going to tell you, it's kind of like, great, because we know how to fix that. So we're going to get a nice big jump in how this person can move and make a big difference. And I'm not going to lie, that's kind of fun. I mean, at one way, you're looking at them, you're like, oh, come on. This is they've been sitting there staring at their lap for 9 months. And it's very, very sad. So the other way that we have an altered perception of vertical is posteriorly. We've all had this, right? Right, we're trying to get them up out of the bed and stand them up, and the little old lady's fighting you tooth and nail, and then put your feet back underneath you. Okay, keep your feet back. Okay, Keep your feet back underneath you. Okay. When they do their toes up, you're just trying to make them right, and then you're like, okay, come forward and stand up. And they're doing one foot out there. I can't do it. They're like, get their foot out there, right? Because you're knocking them down. Okay? When they have that pusher syndrome, when they're like this, they feel like they're like this. So when you bring them to vertical, you're knocking them down. Any one of us, if I pushed you over to the side, you would fight me. They fight you tooth and nail because you're trying to kill them, right? From where they're standing, right? They're not going to do it. Just push it, and then it's a lot of fun to just keep wrestling, right? It's a lot easier if we can agree on gravity, if we're on the same planet, right? And this planet, this is straight up and down. So the same thing posteriorly, right? When you bring them forward, right? When they're here, they feel like they're straight. When you bring them forward, you're knocking them on their face. Now this one, the posterior midline shift can occur just even in elderly people without any sort of specific CNS involvement, right? You know how we have container babies, right? We have to do the tummy time and they scream their heads off, right? Because they're always on their backs, right? Now why do they scream their head off when they go on their stomach? Kids didn't used to scream their head off when they go on their stomach. They were perfectly fine. Well now they're back in their car seat, right? They're back on their back in their crib, and all of their anterior muscles, that's their anti-gravity muscles. And really that's what it's all about the first couple of years, right? Learning how to deal with gravity. Pushing up off the floor, and how do I move around on this planet, and how do I move against gravity? When all your gravity muscles are here, then someone flips you over on your belly for like that 15 minutes, you're like, wait a minute, now I can't move. They're stuck there, and they don't like it. I probably wouldn't either. Same thing kind of happens, I think, with elderly people, right? Because they're back in their hospital bed, and then they're back in their wheelchair. I'm going to get a chair out of here before I kill myself. And then what's the first thing they do as soon as they get in that wheelchair? You put their hips back, and the first thing they do. Right? And then they're back in their wheelchair, and then they get back in the bed, and they're on their back, and their sensory system, and they're all their anti-gravity muscles that they've been using for the last 2 weeks that they've been sick are in the front. As soon as you get them past that tipping point, it's a whole different set of muscles that have to work, right, that they haven't brought in. Also, their vestibular system has been experiencing this range right here, right, back there. They haven't even their vestibular system probably hasn't come to vertical in a long time, much less the front, right? And so they're, and they're afraid. Don't fall on your face, right? Really, don't fall on your face. And I think this is a very strong survival instinct. Okay? Think caveman days. You fall on your face, poke your eye out. Now you don't have 3D vision. You can't throw the spear. You can't kill the woolly mammoth, right? You fall on your face, you knock your teeth out. You can't eat the woolly mammoth. You're dead. Can't kill it. You're dead. Fall on your face, break your nose. You can't smell the lion coming. You're dead. Right? This is a very strong survival instinct. This is our sensory array, and we need it. And they'd much rather fall on the cushy bed than their face, right? So they all start, just even without, they all start just biasing their weight backwards, right? Just a little bit, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more. And they're putting their hips back, but then they need something else forward, so here comes the shoulders, right? And they're all get back here, and then they're scuffing. And then if they're an old man, the belt goes one way or the other, usually up. Right? Or the belt goes under. No offense, fellas. And then when we see them try to get up, right? They're trying to get up, right? Because they don't want to go forward. So we don't actually stand up. Standing up is impossible. We go forward into a squat and then up. You have to go forward. You have to get your center of mass off your butt onto your feet. Even if you get your feet back, that's still 6 to 8 inches, right? You have to go forward. What's the last thing they want to do? Go forward. They don't even want to bend forward, right? You tell them nose over their toes and they'll go, okay. And their center of mass didn't move one bit, and you know, come on, lean forward, and they're like, oh, yep. The second you let go, they're back, right? So, and then they're trying to get, how do I get up without going, they're trying to figure out how do I get up without actually going forward. Well, then you get, right? All of that to avoid going forward. I'm going to show you what to do about that. if I hurry up and get to it. Treatment. Wish there was water down here. So here's our process for developing effective treatment. I'm sure you guys will recognize most of this. But know and analyze normal movement. We do it for gait. We know what's happening at every joint and every phase of gait, right? But it's very difficult when I ask my students, okay, now do it for stairs. Now do it for sit to stand. And they lean forward and they get up. Any more? Well, okay, they push their legs straight. It's, you got to do it for whatever activity that client wants to work on, right? I've had them come in telling me, I need to get back on my Harley. And then I'm a little torn about whether I'm going to teach him that. I was very torn about teaching Al to get in his truck, I assure you. I did not teach him that. I had a client come in, I need to learn, I want to be able to roll over in bed, and I want to be able to, I'm just stuck on my back in bed, I need to learn some bed mobility. Okay, we worked on that. And then 10 months later, they named her Amber. He got me on that one. Now I'm wise to you guys. So analyze, then you know normal, right? Then you analyze and compare. What components that they have, what components are different, what's missing. We're looking at alignment, what's happening at every joint, what muscles are supposed to be on, what muscles are not on enough, what muscles are not enough off. Sequencing, the choreography of the muscles, right? The sequencing of the muscles, where their net center of mass is. I say net center of mass because too often I'm talking to my students and they just like look at the person's belly button, or they say things like weight shift, and I'm like, well, okay, weight shift. Now I've shifted my weight. My weight just shifted. Now I shifted my weight, right? To that way, even though they're going to say the other way, right? I've shifted my weight. Is that what you really want? You really want me to shift my weight? Or do you want me to line up on that leg? You really don't care if I shift my weight. And so I say net center of mass just so that they'll know they need to look at and add in and subtract all the pieces parts. Identify the primary impairment. Identify that big fish to fry, right? Form a theory about which one it is and test it. If you think it's upper trunk lateral translation and you can facilitate them out of that and they walk really great, guess what? That was it. If you put your hands on them and you fix it for them and they get significantly better, that was it. So then you got to design tasks that demand correction of the component that you've ID'd as the primary impairment. Okay? The task drives the motor plan. Remember, something that's physically more challenging is neurologically assistive. Okay? That lady that you saw in the video walking on the balance beam, for the life of her, could not get her hip forward of her ankle to go from mid-stance to terminal stance just on the ground. She'll do it every time on a balance beam. You're thinking, balance beam? Come on. If she can't do it on the ground, I'm not going to put her on the balance beam. Yeah, but she can't get her foot down unless she does move forward. Right? And she figured that out. She's trying to, and she wants that foot down, so, okay, fine. And there she goes. And she would walk very nicely on the balance beam for a long time. Assess, did you get what you want? You have to look at that alignment, right? If you didn't get it, adjust the task. If they didn't give you enough hip extension, you need to move the target higher or move the target farther. If you didn't get what you want, move the target. A lot of our stuff is targets and tasks. No, you need to adjust your verbal cue, change the tactile cue, or change the task. But something needs to change. Yes, you did get it. Congratulations. Now make it harder. Right? Put it into the function. We try to develop, while we're getting them to do their step-ups and all these other pre-get activities, we try to get them sort of conditioned to a certain verbal cue or tapping or whatever. Because you go to walk them and you just can't say things fast enough, right? So lots of tapping and up, chest up, or whatever we've abbreviated it to, so that we can use that when they're walking. So if it gets resolved, awesome. So go back to step 2 because now something else is the primary, and then work on that. Okay, so for these guys that have that posterior midline shift, but also even with or without that posterior midline shift, this is a biomechanical restraint that a lot of them set up, right? This is to avoid risk of falling forward, okay? They want, as long as they have their acetabulum behind the axis of rotation of their ankle, there's an extension, there's a plantar flexion moment at their ankle, and there's an extension moment at their knee. Lovely. They'll take that all day long. The second your acetabulum comes in front of that axis of rotation of your ankle, you have a flexion, assuming that the hat is riding vertically on top. Then they have a flexion moment at the knee that they really like to avoid, right? And part of that, they can control that very nicely by never allowing their tibia to approach vertical. They want that tibia 1 degree back from vertical at all times. If you keep that tibia back from vertical, your knee can't bend the other way, so unless you really get out there, you're pretty much guaranteed you're not going to fall forward. Not only is your knee not going to buckle, but you're not going to fall forward. Double win. Yay! Right? Except for if you don't go over your ankle, if you don't go forward and allow that dorsiflexion, you can't go sit to stand, you can't go mid-stance to terminal stance, you need that ankle going. That's the whole deal with gait. You're coming from behind your foot to in front of your foot, right? You need that ankle. So here's some activities that we do that work really well. These guys are kind of advanced. So he's doing it with like a little stick. You know, we most often have their hands on a chair or on a book. This guy, we had to put a wedge there because he was getting himself, he's got very severe neglect, and he was getting himself so far forward and on his arm that then there was no more demand on his leg, and so his leg wasn't turning on, right? He's got that severe neglect. He doesn't want to talk to that leg. We got to back his brain into a corner where he has no other choice, and then voila, it turns on. But he was getting to where he could stay on his arm, so we had to put that wedge there so that he would run out of wrist extension range before he unweighted his leg. I know, mean, huh? So this is my little buddy Frank. We're gonna see him again later. But here's him. Oh my God, this guy's like the worst posterior midline shift I've ever seen, and he's completely aphasic and ornery to boot, and he's been living in a nursing home for several years and gets away with murder. So, well, eventually I had to go to a bucket. I finally got him doing some stepping squats.
Tiffany, advancing.
Ah! Sorry. Try again. So I don't usually have somebody putting their leg up there. She just had to move because of the aphasia. And then, oh, look at the bend. Yay! Right there, squat to sit or stand to sit. That's the money maker right there. That's your money shot right there. Because now your goals and their goals are aligned. They really want to sit. As long as you keep their center of mass forward on their feet and don't let them go backwards, they have to fold to sit. They will have to volitionally produce dorsiflexion, right? Because they all want to do this and avoid that dorsiflexion, right? You just keep them on their legs, and if they can't go back, they have to fold to sit. And that's really what we want. We want them to be able to raise and lower their center of mass on top of their feet, right? If they get in the middle of the room and drop a cane, and they need to pick that cane up, and they can't do that, now it's a choice of fall picking up the cane or fall trying to walk without it, right? And if their wife's been hiding the beer in the bottom little drawer of the refrigerator, trust me, they're going to try to get it, and they're gonna go down. Personally, I thought that was fairly clever of the wife to put the beer there. And he fell twice. I think he fell twice trying to get that beer out of there.
Was it the third or fourth beer then?
No, first one. The wife hit it, so he couldn't get to them. I don't know why he didn't just pull over a chair and sit down, but obviously not the best problem solving. So 7-in squat, really up, and then sit to squat. Okay, just even doing sit to squat, coming forward. And if you're, in a nursing home or something, you can just have them, you can just sit in front of them and have their hands on your thighs, right? And pull them forward. You work on that sit to squat first, you won't have that fight getting them up. Plus, if they're really bad pushers, I bring them, they're sitting in front of me, facing me, you guys getting that, I think? Their hands are on my lap, I bring them forward into a squat, then I have them put their hands up on my shoulders and I stand up from there. Right? And once they're forward, they're very happy to extend. right? But the problem is they're extending too soon and shoving themselves backwards, right? If you do forward into a squat and then stand up from there, right? Then where are you? For standing and hip extension, you're at closed chain, end range, isometric. Lots of times if you can't get them doing sit to stand and they're not coming to sit to stand, I will passively bring them up to standing and then ask them to hold it. Right? Because going sit to stand is from totally flexed posture. Please, I would like you from everything all flexed up, I'd like you to produce a lot of extension. Right? And they can't all do that. If you stand them up, get all that extension going through their whole body, get them in the end range, so it's all extension, right? Get them in closed chain, and then now isometrically hold that and work from there. Then you ask them, okay, now can you lower yourself down to the chair? You're going to get the isometric closed chain first, then eccentrically sitting down. After they're getting that for a little while, then you got to have a chance of getting them to push up. But that's where that closed chain end range isometric comes in again. Okay, the mid stance. What's the desired alignment? You want that acetabulum in all three planes, right? You need to look at all three planes. We want that acetabulum slightly anterior to the axis of rotation of the ankle. We want the trunk upright. From the frontal plane, we want to see the sternum over their femoral triangle, over their foot. To shorten it up, we call it upper trunk lateral translation, right? But they also have to then abduct their hip to keep it going, right? Otherwise, we just get this, right? Okay, I'll weight shift for you. No, I do not want you to weight shift. I want you to line up over here. So we need to look for that. But here's some activities we do for that. If you're getting your client, so this, where's my, this guy's stepping up. He's been coming to therapy for a while. So he's stepping up on a stool. I'm really having to back him into a corner, make his brain do stuff. He's on a stool and I'm making him with a TheraBand push over to touch his dad's hand. So I'm giving him a task to drive the motor plan, get that upper trunk lateral translation that I want. He's trying very hard not to do it though, isn't he? He actually gets there. This guy's stepping up on the stool. Sometimes they'll jump, right? And they're trying very hard not to use that leg. So they'll give you this, right? Which you don't want to do because then they literally motor planned not to use that leg, right? And you don't want that. So, you know, then we just put a stool or something unstable in front of them and show them that if they jump up on it, it's going to move and they're going to die, and then they're highly motivated not to do that. You know, this is, you know, step in softly, right? So the task drives the motor plan, and guess what they do? This guy here came to us 10 years after his brain injury. He had been treated in I don't know how many clinics, completely non-ambulatory. As of last week, his mother's biggest complaint is now he gets up and walks around the house without her and without his cane. It took us a long time, guys. It's hard to undo 10 years of learned non-use. This lady's new, so she's just doing your basic stand up, step up to a chair. But what do you want to see, right? If they're doing this to you, they are not going to make it, and I point that out. Listen, I can't even get my leg up there. You run out of room. You have to have your chest up and hips forward, then it's easy. You know, I point that out to him. She's climbing that little book to the chair. Oh, mid-stance and terminal stance. Also, I think I didn't point out earlier, for that knee hyperextension or that hip retraction, right, that they want to do all the time. If they're, well, let me do it on the other side where my chair. My chair's over. Oh, I'm not used to the right side. Anyways, they're retracting that hip when they walk to get their knee locked, right? Sometimes even get up higher doesn't work. Step up and out. Work straight. You can't, if you're trying to get to this position, you cannot achieve this position with your hip retracted.
Justin Morgan.
Yes, that's what we say too. Yes, very nice. Right? So they need to step up and out. The added benefit to that is that they have to, this side of their pelvis has to come up, right? So they have to kick in this hip abductor. And if they get their hip out and they try to do this, they can't make it, right? Listen, you can't make it. Nope, I can't make it without a stroke. You're not going to make it with a stroke. Right? They have to get that hip in, they have to get that upper trunk translated over to get that foot up and out. Some of them you have to pick all different kinds of things you're going to have them step to and change the position, but you're looking. Did I get their acetabulum in front of their ankle? Did I get them in the right alignment? No. I changed the task. I moved the target, made the target harder. Mid stance to terminal stance. Oop, wrong one. Here. Oh, there's that step up and out. I should have that on the wrong screen. This guy also came to us in a wheelchair, completely non-ambulatory. He's looking pretty good now, huh? So that's kind of the extreme, but again, starting with like the end and coming back. This is my friend Ken, and this is at his eval. And he's at, walking with the hip retracted, neglect, posterior midline shift, lateral midline shift, you name it, Ken's got it. But here I put the step way out in front of him. I'm gonna smack him pretty good. Come on. You have a leg, remember? My knee's in front of his knee just in case he buckles. All right? But he's getting past that foot. So we're gonna see him a little later. He's gonna do, how am I doing on time? Anybody?
9:35.
What, got 30 minutes? Oh, there it is. Thank you.
Yeah.
My brain filtered that out. Pre-swing. They have to turn the quads off, right? They have to turn the quads off. A lot of them, you can put a plantar flexion stop on them all day long. If they keep their quads on, and their back, if they took a nice big step, now their hip flexors are wound up and their quads on, that hip flexor's pulling their toes right into the ground and they're stuck, right? And then they're doing the circumduction, right? Well, I would too, because my option then is to trip and fall on my face, right? And that if that toe can't come loose there, then they're not, whatever you've done in stance with them, you've got them doing a beautiful stance over their affected leg, they're going to terminal stance. They will not choose to do that because the impetus is this tripping right here, right? Those guys that you see doing that all day long, the impetus is to not trip. So you got to work on the stance too, but you have to get them turning that quad off or they will never choose to use all that beautiful stuff you taught them in stance, okay? Turning the quad off, that's a lot of different things we could go through. Stepping down in front, we have sliders that we have people use. I make them out of old cleaning bottles and bungee cords. So another one you can do is stepping down, using the effecticide to step down.
I take off a watch, I'm not sure.
Right there, she's actually done kind of a challenge level for the entire gait process, right? Here she goes climbing up, weight acceptance to mid stance, and stepping down mid stance to terminal stance. That's the challenge activity for that.
Yeah, what do you mean about the slider?
Oh,
I think she has on the bottom of the feet.
there's I don't have, it's in one of the videos, I'll try to show it to you again, but it's like a little piece of plastic that I have around the toe there so that they can't, so it just slides loose, it doesn't get stuck. And I make them leave it on the ground. I want to hear that thing the whole way through. That's their task, is to leave it on the ground. Otherwise, the first thing we get is that, right? And they hike up, and once they've hiked up and done that, then you're never going to get them to turn off the quads, right? As soon as they hike up like that, it doesn't matter if they turn off their quads. Here, turning off your quads, hip flexion is in the path of travel, right? So they turn their quads off and it'll just naturally fall where they want to go. As soon as they get here, knee flexion and hip flexion is no longer in the path of travel. Gravity is no longer going to pull their leg over whether if they turn their quad off or not, right? Treatment for midline shifts, again, altered perception of verticality, altered graviception. They're aligning themselves with an erroneous vertical. Okay, overview. First thing we do is reset. Why is some of this in gray? We reset and correct the midline. We're using sensory integration, some sensory integration techniques. We're overcorrecting them. We're involving multiple systems, the vision system, vestibular, tactile, to recalibrate. off of each other, right? We're trying to get them to recalibrate off of all their systems to what is correct, right? When we're little, you know, we see something there, we reach out and we learn, oh, it's that much elbow away. This is that much elbow away. We also learn as things come bigger in our visual field, we should probably move. So when we're trying to reorient them, we can use the tactile system, the vestibular system to recalibrate that. Then we're going to recruit the inhibited side. Okay? Whatever it is they don't want to do, we're going to get that. They are actively inhibiting that side. Trust me. Right? They are trying to align with vertical. They need to turn that side off to get to vertical. Right? And anytime they turn that on, again, this is where they feel they are. If they turn that leg on, they're falling. Right? They really won't turn that leg on as long as if doing so, it's going to knock them down. Right? And that's if they turn that leg out, they're like, I'm not going to push myself off the edge of a cliff, lady. You are crazy. So we need, the long-term solution is to get them recruiting that side. You know, we have, how do we move? We move to the right by pushing with our left, right? And that's normal, and that's what their brain will accept. When they're pushing really hard, whether they'll turn that side on or not, the only way they're going to accept coming back to the middle is if it's through their leg and that ground reaction force. That they'll often accept. You pushing them over, no. You're going to kill them. And you actually don't know where to stop. My leg length has an end range. I know I'm not going to go farther than how long my leg is. So I can trust that there's an end point that's not going to go past vertical. You, I do not trust. And if you start moving me, I will motor plan you. Because now you're the threat to my survival. And they really act like that, don't they? Right? Then repeat. Their midline is going to degrade. Their midline correction is going to degrade. And more rapidly under stress. The harder activity you have them do, the faster their midline is going to degrade. You're going to need to sit them down and reset their midline more frequently at first. So how do we know we're getting any better at their midline, that their midline orientation is getting any better? Well, first of all, it'll degrade less slowly. You have to reset them less often. In the beginning, you may have to reset their midline in between every forced use activity they do. You know, you stand them up, get them to do 3 step-ups, they're shoving, you gotta sit them down and reset them, right? Pretty soon, they can do 2 or 3 challenge activities before you have to reset them. So the decreased frequency and how long you have to work with them to get them reset, the decreased frequency and duration of correction and reset, their increased willingness to move in a difficult direction, right? And again, same thing with you'll see it resolve in sitting before it resolves in standing. You will see it resolve in standing before it resolves in gait. Okay, when you start seeing it resolve in sitting, don't be surprised that then they're still doing it in standing. It will resolve there and then it will resolve in gait. But the ability to recruit the inhibited muscles, and then you're going to see them start being able to recruit those muscles outside of forced use. Outside of the brain being backed into a corner where it's recruit that leg or die. I exaggerate, but not really. So they're going to start being able to do that without needing to have the forced use. And the ability to maintain midline in increasingly more stressful activities, when they can do it through gait, and you don't need to reset them. Pretty soon you're just resetting them at the beginning of therapy and maybe a little bit before you walk. Maybe not. Then pretty soon you don't have to reset them at all. So how do you reset them? Here's my cute little lady. Now she's funny. She has a brain injury and a stroke, and so she's not pushing to the affected side. But, you know, a lot of people are afraid this one, just overcorrect them. And then I'm going to involve her visual system and her tactile system by putting the other arm over there. And she has to turn her head because I'm asking her how many fingers I'm holding up. She's got a posterior one too that I didn't face Okay. So quite a lot better, right? And that's like 10 seconds later. And that'll last for a few minutes. This is when she first started with us. We often do reaching tasks before we get them up. We reach. I keep thinking you can see my little arrow and you cannot. Oh, you can. So we'll have them reach further to increase the excursion that they're willing to go over there. But again, the long term, when you're going to the right, then your left side of your trunk's holding you up, right? And they don't want to do that because they're pretty sure that's not going to kick in, they're going to fall over. So the long-term correction is they need to be recruiting that side. When they go really far, then they can just kind of like teeter-totter like I'm doing and counterbalance to get over there. They don't really have to turn on that side. If you have them reaching up and over, you're getting that beautiful upper trunk lateral translation right on top of that hip, right? We don't want them doing this. We're getting that upper trunk lateral translation, and they have to recruit that side. If they can get that upper trunk lateral translation in standing, it'll just pick up the other leg for them, right? You can even exaggerate it a little bit. And then it helps recruiting that side, and it also helps reset their midline. So you don't have to keep going down on your elbow. So here's my little friend Frank again. Remember him with the bucket? Oh, no, this is Frank. I don't know if you remember him with the bucket. Just to show you.
1, 2, 3. Stand.
Okay. Now let's see if you can have him take a step forward or so.
I'm going to fast forward. See him pushing?
He step back. Oh, no.
Nice pushing. He's super strong. She's a professional athlete, guys, and he's going to almost knock her down. That got edited all incorrectly. But after we did the sit-to squats, and we got his ankle alarm turned off, right? And we got his vestibular system, and we got his midline a little better corrected, then he was willing to do some stuff for me. And now I want him to use that ankle dorsiflexion and weight bearing, right?
Good job. Stand down. Good. Can you do one more?
Before he wouldn't even stand
One
up.
more. Yeah.
So now his ankle's desensitized, he's agreeing with Earth's gravity. So off he goes. It's not perfect, that's not bad for one treatment. And I'm sure it's like not having to wrestle him like poor Casey was.
And the slider.
Oh yeah, there's a slider, thank you. I don't know if you can see it on his foot there. Can you see that? We have these the cleaning fluid comes in the jars, and at the bottom edge, I can make 3 or 4 little sliders because I use that bottom edge to come up over their toe. I can send you guys the way we make way we make it if you like. So we met this Ken earlier. This is his eval. He was the one doing the long step up. So this is his eval. This is him how he chooses to walk. Oh my gosh. My head is not staying here. He's finally going to go after chatting to me for half an So kind of typical, although he's got that cane way in front of him. He's trying to keep everything in a straight line. He's very hypersensitive in his vestibular system to lateral movement. So he's trying to eliminate lateral movement if he can. So that's and then we did sit to squats and steps in squats. We did those long steps that you saw, right? And so here he is about 15 minutes later.
Good. Bigger than you want to. Excellent. Bigger than you want to. A little bit. Bigger than you want to.
You can even see that he's dynamically using that leg. Not perfectly yet, but he's definitely coming to where he's got having to do dynamic control of that knee, and he's no longer hyperextending it, right?
Go bigger than you want to. Ready? Bigger than you want to. Good. Bigger than you want to. Excellent. Bigger than you want to. A little bit. Bigger than you want to. Come on, bigger.
That's why they say they hear my voice in their head. So that's at the eval, guys. That's 15 minutes later. So do you think if we go back to the traditional view on gait, do you guys think I changed his strength in 15 minutes? Did I change his range of motion in 15 minutes? Did I put on a better plantar flexion stop? Right, did I decrease his spasticity, get him some Botox? No, so it never was that. He was choosing to walk that way, right? Because he felt that was the safest way to walk. He didn't want to trust that wonky leg. He was pretty sure when his acetabulum came in front of his ankle and there was that flexion moment, he wasn't going to be able to handle it, right? So he was avoiding that. So what did I do? I taught him how to do that, right? I taught him how to, even in steps and squats, he's having to turn on those gastrocs, right? Trust me, it's not the quads. It's not, it never is the quads. The quads are off by the time you get to mid-stance. Knee extensions being done by the gastrosoleus from mid-stance to terminal stance. So they need that. They need that to do mid-stance to terminal stance. Your gastrosoleus is lowering that tibia forward onto the other leg from mid-stance to terminal stance. Your gastrocs are controlling knee extension, right? So when they're doing those steps and squat, they're desensitizing that position, weight bearing and dorsiflexion. They're also having to turn on those gastrocs. But they have their hands down, so they're feeling pretty safe about it. So they'll start doing it there for you. Then I had him step up and step really far. I had him step up on a chair too. And I showed him, and I showed his brain mostly, that his leg could do that. You can control from here to here. And I got those gastrocs firing, then he was willing to do it for me. But I didn't change strength. I promise you I did not change his stroke. I mean, if I had that, I'd be sitting in Hawaii after selling my invention, right? I didn't change his stroke. I didn't change it. So it wasn't that. He was choosing to walk that way to avoid that flexion moment at his knee. Once I showed him that he could do that. And he wasn't going to do that willingly. I had to put him in forced use activities that demanded that. And then, you know, once you've stepped up really far, or once you've stepped up to a chair, and once you've stepped up really far onto a step, you know, then you point out, well, if you can do that, it's pretty easy to step on the ground, right? If your leg can hold you while you climb a step, what are the chances it can hold you while you take a step? Pretty good. Some different approaches to recalibrating.
Learn how to process sensory information again. Learn how to process sensory information again. Learn how to process sensory information.
I was told to put my videos on a loop. I was like, how do I mute them? She's also, pendulums are great. Isn't she cute? Pendulums are great. What is the first thing we do with babies when they come out, right? We start swinging that pendulum, right? It's great for resetting that. It's not you telling them where the middle is. They can feel that gravitational point where the middle is. And if you've got very severe left neglect like this lady did, you swing up to the right, your brain better hope there's a left. Otherwise, now what? They know there's a left. There has to be a left. There's all that sensory feedback that's integral to the task that's telling them that there's a right and a left. There's both sides, telling them where the middle is. Then she did 0.8 meters per second for 50 feet. So she more than doubled her speed, and she was happy as a clam. It's terrifying not to agree with Earth's gravity. It's really terrifying. You think you're making great decisions, right? And you cannot figure out, I've gone far enough to the right. Why do I keep falling? So talking about safety, I'm in a hurry though. But so here's where I'm going to say something disruptive and something that probably people are going to disagree with. When you're teaching them in the hospital, back up to the chair, reach back, have a seat, right? That will not make them safer. They will not be safer. Okay? There's no such thing as keeping your balance. That's not a thing. We don't keep our balance. There's no such thing. Okay? Knee hyperextension may increase your 10-meter walk test times, but it's a premeditated fall. Let me tell you why. Okay? So, and let me tell you what we can do about it. What's ultimate safety? Is it risk elimination or is it risk management? What do we do? Right? Why don't we need walkers? Because we have dynamic control of all of our joints, and we have dynamic control of our center of mass over our base of support, right? Is equipment dependency really, really realistic? Let me tell you something. We see them when they go home, and we see them for years, so we know what actually happens in their house. I tell you what actually happens when you teach them to back up and reach back for the chair
right? That we often do. There aren't any chairs with arms in their house, right? Think about your house right now. Count how many chairs you have in your house with arms on them. Don't count the couch because that's too low and soft. Don't count the recliner unless it's a lift chair. Now, how many chairs do you have in your house that aren't on wheels that have arms? Does anybody have one? Maybe at the head of your dining room table, or maybe someplace else. I don't know. But when you go to a restaurant, chairs do not have arms. They can't fit in as many people, right? You go to McDonald's, you got to slide into the booth. Chairs with arms exist in wheelchairs and doctor's office rooms, doctor's waiting rooms, PT waiting rooms as well. They just don't exist in nature. They exist in the hospital, and you get told if you don't do it, like that patient's gonna die, right? Well, what else are we doing? We're teaching them. The first thing they do is move their center of mass back, right? And now they're doing it with their arms, and they're learning to raise and lower their body with their center of mass behind their feet. When they get up that way, they're getting up with their center of mass behind their feet, then moving their feet underneath them, and then getting up. But there aren't any arms in nature. There's no arms on their toilet, I promise you. Right? So what do we give them? A raised toilet seat. What if the neighbors invite them over for dinner? What is it? You know, I got my raised toilet seat. No problem. Right? They're not going to do that. What if they want to go to their daughter's wedding shower? What if they want to go to their granddaughter's baby shower? That toilet's not going to have arms, right? They're probably going to have steps to get in and out. They're probably not going to sit in a chair with arms, right? So if we haven't taught them, we want to teach them how to raise and lower their center of mass on top of their feet, right? When they drop that cane in the middle of the room, the reason they can't pick it up is so they don't know how to hold staying on top of their feet. They won't allow that dorsiflexion to happen, and we didn't teach them. Okay, so my students always tell me, not Carl, of course, my students often tell me, well, you know, this is a challenge center, so you can see people for longer. What am I going to do in the real world where they make me have the client reach back? Okay, fair enough. So, you know, you can teach them all day. Sit to stand and stand to sit on their feet. Sit to squat to stand to squat to sit. The last day, you can teach them to reach back. They'll be delighted. If they can go up and down without the arms, what are the chances they can go up and down with arms? Pretty good, right? You don't need to teach them. That's not the best use of your time with them. You don't need to teach them compensations. They will be, you show them compensation at the last minute. If you're walking them and gait training them with a tall pole, what are the chances they can walk with a quad cane? Pretty good. You hand them a quad cane or a walker on the last day, they can do it. They will be fine, and they will be delighted. They're like, oh, you've been holding that on me. You had this the whole time? Why couldn't I be walking with this? Because I like you. And when you go home, I don't want you to die. Right? So otherwise, even if you do have to teach them to reach back, I'll usually have them back up, keep one hand on the walker, have them bow first. Right? Bow first, then reach back. So I've already done some of it. I've already placed myself where my center of mass stays on my feet a whole lot more. Right? And plus, this works where there's no arms. This doesn't work where there's no arms, unless you can do a nice back bend. But that requires a lot of dorsiflexion, which we're not going to do. Right? Bowing forward, reaching back, works with no arms as well. Okay? And putting one hand on the walker, if they need a little help pushing up, bowing forward. That task of leaving their hand on the walker gets you that nose over toes instead of this, right? Nose over toes. Okay, put your hand up on this walker, and I leave the walker way out there. Right? Now they're there, you know. Now have them push up. Okay? It doesn't take any more time to do that. Just have them bow first before they reach back. Okay? It's better to teach them to deal with the real world reality they will face. Okay? What's knee hyperextension? What's the main way we give disabled access into buildings? Ramps. How easy is it to walk down a ramp without ever stepping past and without your acetabulum ever coming in front of your ankle? You better be darn sure you never even get close, right? But they're going to get in a hurry. They all have to pee.
right? Or they all want to get to the car before they run or they're scared and they're going to hurry, and that one time they're going to step two, and that knee's going to come undone, and then what? They're going to go. Unless they're going to be on house arrest, guys, unless we're going to sentence them to house arrest for the rest of their life, aging in place, hand them all this stuff, and then, yes, aging in place, that one place. I would much rather have my patients aging all over the place, right? I want them to be able to go outside, right? I want them to, if they don't, life will out. They will get in a situation where their knee comes unlocked. And when I'm teaching them that dynamic knee control and getting them to unlock their knee, some of them will not choose to put that in their regular gait, okay? Especially if they have sensory problems or that neglect. They like that little vibration feel of hitting that ligament. That's like their little leg. I know I'm safe. You're going to be okay. You're all right. Keep walking, right? So they love that, and they're not going to choose to do that. But when their knee does come unlocked, and when they do want to go get that beer out of the fridge, they have dynamic knee control, and their knee will come unlocked. It's premeditated falls if you teach them knee hyperextension, okay? They will come unlocked. I have a little lady, am I out of time? Oh, nope. I have a little lady she came to us when she was 80, okay, with a stroke, and, walking 10 feet with someone hoisting her with the gait belt, the human light gait thing. They're just hoisting her with the gait belt. And, they're walking her like that, she can go about 10 feet. Well, we got her, and she's locking that leg all about. We got her going, we got that dynamic knee control, thank goodness we did. Because about 5 minutes after that, her husband passed away with stage 4 lung cancer. And the whole deal was, they had to have 8 hours a day care before that, and they were going to run out of money and be in the nursing home within 6 months. We avoided that and got her down to 3 hours a day. Actually, it wasn't 3 hours a day, it was 3 hours twice a week. To help with showers and take them grocery shopping mostly. She could do everything herself, which was good, because she helped take care of her husband, and he got to stay in their home and have hospice and stay there until he passed away. Then he left, what's she going to do? Well, she's got dynamic knee control, so she's going to stay in her house. And she's still there. She's at 88 now, right? She does fall once in a while, but that's usually because she insists on pruning her roses herself, right? And she's got terrible neglect, and she just never sees things. But, she falls maybe twice a year, if that, once every 9 months. That's good for most 88-year-olds, much less an 88-year-old with a stroke, right? So she's doing well. She gets to stay in her home. There's no such thing as keeping your balance. None of us do that, right? We really don't. We don't keep our balance. We're constantly detecting and correcting. If you're standing in sand and you do that little plumb line thing, we'd all have a little balance wobble there, right? You'd all be drawing a circle in the stand. The better your balance is, the smaller the circle, right? Because you're detecting quickly and you're accurately correcting. Our clients don't detect that quickly, and then they overshoot, right? And they're using those hip strategies, which is a little bit like writing your name with your elbow, right? But somebody's been saying, keep your balance, keep your balance. So the second they get off balance, they freak out. Oh my God, I'm going to fall. And then they go home and they tell the story. I almost fell in PT today. The PT had to catch me. I almost, right? They love to tell that story. We don't tell them that. We tell them there's no such thing. Don't hold your breath waiting to keep your balance, because it won't happen, because that's not the human condition. Nobody does that. Professional athletes don't do that. You're not going to do that. What do we learn to do? We learn to fix it. We learn to realize when we're off, and we learn to fix it. So when they get off balance, we stop them. Ugh, no water. Sorry, guys. We stop them within a range that they can recover from. We teach them how to fix it. They've got to now fix it. Okay? We don't help them. Once they start to initiate fixing it, we'll follow them and assist them. Don't initiate it for them, or they'll let you do it. And then, yay, you fixed it. Awesome. Right? When they're out walking and they almost go, we stop them. Now fix it. You need to fix it. Bow forward. Now hips forward, chest up. Awesome, you fixed it. Great, let's go. Right? Now they had a positive experience. Before they almost died. Now they're scared. They don't want to come back to physical therapy. I almost died. Right? Now they learn to fix it. Positive experience. Positive reinforcement. They're going to learn that. If they can hang in there, our patients do not freak out when they're about to lose their balance. I mean, you see what we do to them. You see anybody freaking out? No, because they learn that there's no such thing as keeping their balance. Getting off balance is just an opportunity to learn how to fix it. Right? if I can find some moisture in my mouth, I'm going to finish this. So the true value of physical therapy. We talked a little bit last night at some discussions, but here's our outcome studies, okay? I'm trying to talk the talk of the insurance companies. It's not going to happen. Okay. What do they care about? They care about hospitalizations and the number of chronic conditions. In blue is the challenge center clients. In orange is typical Medicare clients. That's the number of Medicare clients with one or more hospitalizations in a year, separated by number of basic ADLs limited. Okay? So at 2 to 3 ADLs limited, 13% of the typical Medicare population is hospitalized one or more times in a year. 2% of ours are. Okay, this includes our assisted fitness clients. Look here, people that are 6+ chronic conditions, none of ours went. That might have just been, an aberration. 67% of the typical Medicare population goes one or more times. Here's our average. Their average is 21%. Our average is 33.6%. Physical therapy is not a cost. It is an investment. Physical therapy and fitness for these guys, maintaining their function, is not a cost. It's an investment. You're my hero. Thank you. Oh my God. I knew you were struggling. I'm sorry, these are chronic conditions. These are ADLs over here. Okay? And we know that people get more expensive the more ADLs, basic ADLs they have limited. Right? 0 ADLs limited, they cost about $1,300 a year. And that's just Medicare dollars, not Medi-Cal, not out of pocket. Right? When you get up to 5 or 6 ADLs limited, they're costing $30,000 to $50,000 a year. Right? There's your margin. There's where you can make your margin with fewer people, right? So, it's a long story how we got all the data. But this is how much we estimate we save the system a year, right? This is our PT clients. Low estimate would be $6,000 a year on average. High estimate about $7,000 a year. It does not cost that to give them PT. And this is, they've been graduated from PT, right? So this is not like they're going to have PT day in and day out for the rest of their life. And this is just for 1 year, but they're not going to decline because they're going to come to our assisted fitness program. So that's going to be $7,000 a year for the foreseeable future. That's worth a couple $1,000 investment, right? If I had someplace I could put $3,000 and see a $7,000 return on it for the next 5 years, I am in. Get that in the stock market, you are a genius. Okay, this is just our assisted fitness clients. Okay, we save almost $3,000 a year just doing assisted fitness with these clients. Why? Because they're such an expensive population. 5% of the Medicare population accounts for 50% of the costs. Guess where that 5% goes? They go to challenge center. Right? We've got that 5%. That 5% is people with high number of chronic conditions and disabilities. They usually go hand in hand. Right? You give them a little extra help, you put together a gym, and you have some people help them work out, and voila. People don't go to the hospital. Crazy. I mean, who thought? This is where the margin is, right? They tried to do this study with silver sneakers, and they try to do something, they're always trying to do something that's, a little impact on 1 million people. So they did silver sneakers, and after 2 years, they got a cost saving of $500. Right? That's one, per person.
Okay.
But that's after 2 years of these guys going to silver sneakers. And that's if they went twice a week. Okay? We got your $500 right there, right? In 1 year. Because our clients, would typically cost so much more, right? So, I think this is a different conversation to have with Medicare, right? I don't want to go to them and beg, oh, come on, it's really nice to make old ladies walk. They do not care if old ladies walk ever again. I promise you. They care about the dollar. Right? They're going to follow that dollar. If you show them you spend $2,000, $3,000 upstream and you're saving $50,000 downstream, now you're having a much better conversation. Right? If you guys invest in specialized fitness programs for these guys at a very minimal cost, you're going to see almost $3,000 a year in savings every year. That's an investment, right? PT is an investment, not a cost. If you're doing it right. I keep planning to make t-shirts and have challenge center written on there. So, there's my speech for it.